Let's try that again. Good morning, and welcome to First Church Unitarian on this beautiful sunny morning. And happy Mother's Day. I see a number of people in the audience or in the congregation who I hope have been greeted this morning as mothers. My name is Peter Ersland. I serve as a member of the Standing Committee, and again, I welcome you all here this morning. I have just a few items that I want to point out in the community matters. Hopefully you've all received this by email. There should also be a copy in your order of service. Look it over. There's a lot of good information in here, including things about an online meeting with the candidate for UUA president. Chris and I watched a session with her a few weeks ago. Very interesting. A number of items for things coming up in the next few weeks. Probably most importantly, from my perspective for the congregation, is that our annual warranted meeting, will be next Sunday, May 21st at 11:30 here in the sanctuary. Also online for those people who want to participate that way.
Zoom only, no YouTube.
Zoom only, no YouTube. There are copies of the annual report printed in the Volunteer Center, and this will be available online as well in the coming week. For online, go to the governance section, and there's a tab for annual meetings or annual reports. There's a tab for the warranted meeting. I will also point out that we are currently accepting nominations for our Keeper of the Flame Award. We've received a few. Keep them coming. There is no lack of wonderful support within the congregation. So identify people who you think are deserving of this award, and let us know why you think that. And with that, do we have a reading of the warrant?
Yes.
I will say welcome to church, and we'll have a reading of the warrant.
Hi, I'm Ann Donald, your clerk. First, the voting list is now available on our website as well as posted at the church. I am notifying you, the members of First Church Unitarian, that you are lawfully entitled to vote in its affairs, to meet in person in the sanctuary or on a Zoom call. The link will be provided after church services on May 21st at 11:30 a.m. following the Sunday service, and a brief social time to act on the following articles. First, to review and accept the members' minutes from the October 23, 2022 warranted meeting. Second, to hear and act upon the 2022 to 2023 annual report. Third, to elect officers of First Church Unitarian and nominating committee members. Fourth, to act upon the proposed budget for July 2023 through June 2024. Fifth, to authorize the treasurer to borrow money on behalf of the church. Sixth, to transact any other business that may lawfully come before said meeting. Thank you. Hi, I'm
the words of Lindasusan Ulrich. For all the mothers and mother figures, the grandmothers, aunts, and extended family members who mother, the soon-to-be mothers, the wish they were mothers, the never wanted to be mothers, the it's complicated mothers, the birth mothers, foster mothers, adoptive mothers, stepmothers, the used to be dad mothers, the more than one mom mothers, the single mothers, separated mothers, stay-at-home mothers, unhoused mothers, the grieving mothers, those who grieve for their mothers, and those whose grief is complex, for all the communities that mother, and for all who depend on the great mother, you are held and beloved. Let us worship. I'd like to invite Zachary to light our chalice this morning. Oh. All right, there's going to be an entrance. Thanks, Zachary. And as Zachary lights our chalice, please join with me in saying the words of our covenant. Love is the spirit of this church, and service its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Thank you. Good morning. Welcome. I join with Peter in welcoming you here to First Church Unitarian in Littleton, Massachusetts. My name is Lara Hoke, pronouns she, her, and I'm so happy and lucky to be the minister serving this incredible community. I'm so glad you're with us this morning, whether you're here in the sanctuary or perhaps with us online. We're glad that you've joined us. If you're new with us this morning, we're especially glad to see you. If you're here in the sanctuary, please follow us after the service to the vestry for some coffee and conversation. Get to know us a bit if you wish. And if you're online with us for the first time this morning, if you haven't already, I invite you to go to our website, fculittle.org, and there you can find a lot of information about us and ways to contact us if you wish. So it is good to be together on this gorgeous day, and happy Mother's Day to all the mothers and mother figures out there. Today, we will, of course, honor and acknowledge Mother's Day, but the sermon topic will be a bit different, finally kind of going into more of my conclusions about what came out of it from all these decade services we had this year, and what can we draw from that. So let's start out, though, with a hymn chosen with Mother's Day in mind. It's number, is it 1067? Yeah, number 1067 in the Teal hymnal, Mother Earth, Beloved Garden. The lyrics, of course, in the hymnal, but also on the screens. And I invite you to rise in body or spirit.
short. Whoa. Knocked it right out. Okay, can you hear me? Good. Okay. So happy Mother's Day to all the moms here and everywhere. And for anyone, I think this is appropriate for any age, how to raise a mom. I think you can try it with your 80-year-old mom as well. So, here we go. How to raise a mom. Raising a happy, healthy mom is fun and important. Here are some tips. First of all, help your mom ease into the day. How to start her morning. Let her sleep in, just a little longer. Then kiss, kiss, kiss her awake. Fling open the curtains and say, "Rise and shine, your breakfast is ready." When it's time to get dressed, be sure to give her choices. How to dress a mom. Not too serious, not too silly, not too sparkly. Perfect, look at her, she's perfect. And a mom can forget things when she's hurrying to leave the house, so help her by piling it all at the door. Snacks, toys, purse, keys, phone, shopping list, library books to return, letters to mail, more snacks, and more toys. Errands are fun until you end up in a long line. If your mom starts to get cranky, surprise her with a snack or a toy. If that doesn't work, act out a goofy story. If it still doesn't work, try saying in a very cheerful voice, "Thank you so much, Sweet Pea, for being so patient." When you're finally done, if you're lucky, you might run into a friend. Right away, plan a play date for your mom. And whisper, "Remember to be a good sharer." Back at home, if your mom has work to do, tell her it's quiet time. Shh. Then start your own project. On regular days, you probably noticed mom tidying up without being asked. Today, it's your turn. A happy, healthy, strong mom needs exercise. How to exercise with a mom. Take turns scoring goals, race against the wind, hop like a kangaroo, swing like a monkey, and slither like a snake. When your mom's all tired out, show her the best ways to relax. How to relax. Exactly. Hold the yoga pose for as long as you can. Lie in the grass and look for wiggly worms, slimy snails, and roly-poly bugs. Music, yeah. Or sing her a lullaby. What if the rainy weather keeps you stuck inside? How to entertain a mom inside. Plan an indoor beach day. Teach her how to paint a rainbow. Set up a zoo all across the floor. And if you notice, there are sharks there too. Don't forget them. Now, if your mom is a picky eater, try these tricks. Broccoli. Pretend she's a dinosaur gobbling up the tree. Roar, chomp, chew, chew, chew. Cauliflower. They're snowy tree day trees. Dum, dum, dum. Carrots. Make them into hearts. Give her a choice. Which will you eat first, your peas or your beans? When it starts to get dark, your mom may want to go straight for bedtime stories, but tell her, nope, not yet. First, you have to put away your toys, wash your face, put on your pajamas, brush your teeth, hop into bed. Now it's time for story time. If she asks one more, please say, okay, but just once. Remind her it's important to get to sleep on time. Then snuggle up and ask, what was the best thing about today? And she'll snuggle back and say, you. And that's how you raise a happy, healthy mom. Happy Mother's Day.
One of the wonderful opportunities that the offering gives us each week is that we know our money can do more together than it can do alone. We know that if we combine our forces, we can do beautiful ministry together. And it's in that spirit that this morning's offering will be given and received in grateful appreciation. Please join with me in the words of our community response. We are grateful for the opportunity to give and serve, and grateful for the gifts we have received. May this affirm the ministries of our church community, both within and beyond these walls. Most weeks we have a special time that we call the Candles of Caring. This is a chance to share a very important joy or concern that is with you this morning with this gathered beloved community. So that more people can share if they wish, we ask that you let us know your name and tell us briefly how we might direct our thoughts, prayers, or healing wishes. If you're here in the sanctuary, please raise your hand high enough so that we can see it, and we'll come to you with a microphone and light a candle for you up front. If you are with us on Zoom and wish to share, please raise the hand in the reactions area, and we will call on you in turn. Are there any candles of caring this morning? Amen, and blessed be. As you know, this church year we've spent one Sunday each month looking back at the modern U.S. decades, starting with the 1950s. It's been fun to sing the songs from the decades, sometimes challenging. It's been fun to dance sometimes to the songs from the decades. I've loved the choir's performances. I really have. Some highlights for me personally: in the 1950s service, it was great spontaneous fun when Molly played Great Balls of Fire so fabulously, and our late dear friend Doug came down in his great cool cat getup and danced, and that was really memorable. In the 1960s service, a highlight for me was the choir singing our postlude, Aquarius, Let the Sun Shine In. And again, all you fun, filthy hippies got up to dance and sing. Flower power on full display, lots of fun. The 70s service, also fun, dedicated to our dear friend Doug. It was fun to do the moves to the YMCA together, and the choir did an incredible job singing Bohemian Rhapsody. And then they did it the next month for Doug's memorial service and nailed it even better the second time around. I thank them for that. For most of this congregation, I dare say those were the more nostalgic of the services that we did in this series, since we are baby boomer heavy, I think it's safe to say. And those were kind of your formative decades. The 80s service was nostalgic for me as a Gen Xer. I loved hearing the choir sing Don't Stop Believin', and I loved singing We Are the World Together with You at the end. The 1990s service had more Gen X nostalgia and some millennial nostalgia even. The millennials are fully old enough now to have, old nostalgia going on. It's true, right? And on a personal note, before this year and doing this series, I always thought it was the 70s, kind of my little kid years, and the 80s, my coming of age years, that were the decades that shaped me. But I had the gift in preparing for the 90s service of realizing that that was really the third decade that shaped me, and I hadn't put that together before in my head. So that was memorable for me personally. I loved the moment in the service when we went from having that old dial-up sound and the "you've got mail" to Molly pounding into Smells Like Teen Spirit. That was fun, I thought. The aughts service, still don't know what to call them. The 2000 service offered some nostalgia for millennials again. That was another case where, in preparing for the service and the sermon, I was really struck in a way that I hadn't quite fully thought of before. What a difficult decade that really was. What a brutal decade, starting with 9/11, including economic catastrophe and war, and just really not a good start to a new millennium. Sort of sad to start off the 21st century, which we'd all been anticipating, with such a tough first decade. As Molly and I prepared for the service and picking out the music, it really struck me how sad a lot of the music sounded from that decade. And it struck me how much of the music we really couldn't sing because the lyrics had become so explicit compared to previous decades. So that really hit me in preparing for these. And we just had last week the 2010s and beyond service. And thank goodness there were some happier tunes to pick from that decade. I loved hearing the choir sing Uptown Funk. Excuse me, it was far more fabulous than you imagine, really. It sounded good. It struck me this year that for all of the flaws of the decades, and there were many deep cultural flaws in those earlier 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s decades, they definitely all had some moments of cultural joy, joyful music in the mix. With the 90s, it struck me that there was far less joyful music to pick from. Still good music, but fewer fun, just simple, upbeat, hopeful songs to pick from. Starting with the 90s, it sort of felt like somehow we'd forgotten how to have fun together. And I wondered what had shifted there. Excuse me, I have allergies. The 1990s were, of course, when scholar Robert Putnam wrote Bowling Alone, describing various trends of Americans not joining civic organizations and social organizations in the same numbers that they used to. And of course, that trend continues. It's still true. Americans are still far more home in our own nuclear family bubbles than we were in the past. There's a cultural loneliness that seems to have started to set in maybe in the 90s. And if anything, that loneliness has become more profound with time, I think. The 90s also felt like the start of increasing diversity in this country being more evident, more obvious somehow. You started to see it more clearly in the music charts with grunge and rap and all the various music scenes that started to pop up. The trend toward greater diversity, of course, continues, and it's one of the best things about this country, in my opinion. When I have my moments of cynicism about the United States, I remind myself that my state representative was once a little girl who had to escape from the Khmer Rouge in Cambodia. And my mayor was once a little boy who had to go through the same thing. I mean, only in America. How many places on earth would refugees from a totalitarian nightmare grow up in their adoptive country to kind of rule their city? That's really beautiful. And I don't think that happens too many places. And it reminds me that there's still so much potential magic in this country. I suppose it's a small wonder that there would be a reactionary push to get back to some sort of monoculture, or at least an imagined monoculture. The fabulous 50s, that's when America was great, I guess, in the minds of some with white privilege or other kinds of cultural privilege. But we know that the 50s weren't so fabulous for many Americans with less racial or gender or other privilege, of course. But in the earlier decades we thought about this church year, the 50s through the 80s, there was more of an illusion of this monoculture. Perhaps it was because it was a monoculture that was running the country and the big businesses even more than today. And so we had these sort of created, maybe somewhat artificially created, cultural touchstones. So many of us were listening to the same music and watching the same television shows because that's what the powerful men of the monoculture were producing. And some of it, of course, really was excellent. And so we had those created cultural touchstones. There were fewer television channels, no internet. And so we were around that proverbial water cooler talking about the same episode we just saw of All in the Family or the Mary Tyler Moore Show or the Cosby Show or whatever your jam. We listened to Casey Kasem tell us the American Top 40. How many of you have that little theme song going through your head now? Yeah, me too. And we could usually guess pretty well what the number one song was that week. And now I stand here wondering, outside of people in the same household, I wonder if any of us watched the same episode of anything last week in real time. I don't know. I don't take it for granted anymore. Do any of us know any song in the top 10 this week? Yep, see? No, not even our millennials can help us. I mean, it's just not that obvious anymore in the same way. It's just not, I don't know, do the kids and the youth that went downstairs have more of an idea? I kind of still don't think so. And in a way, that's beautiful, because isn't it strange with all the people in this world who sing and make music that there used to be just that tiny handful that anyone ever knew about, and now it feels like that gets spread around a little bit better, which is a good thing, and diversity is wonderful. And technology and the internet really have been something of an equalizer. It enables more voices to be heard, more people to get ideas and their art out there if they wish. The challenge is, as I've said before, how to celebrate the diversity, but also how to have bridges of connection and community across it all. How do we find each other? How do we come together more in joy? Do we know how to have fun together anymore? Do we have to be lonely or isolated in our nuclear family units so often? There's an epidemic of depression in the United States, and to me, it's a small wonder. The COVID-19 pandemic, of course, hasn't done anything to help. I'm so grateful for the technology in our lives. I really am. It makes life so much easier in many ways, or at least more convenient in many ways, and yet it reminds me of a comedy riff I heard a few years back about how now with technology, everything is amazing and no one is happy. And it's sort of true. I keep thinking of my smartphone. With this tiny thing, I can stream pretty much any movie or television show ever made. I could have a free video meeting with somebody almost anywhere in the world. I could take a picture or make a movie or a recording. I could even make a multi-part recording on this thing. I could read just about any book ever written. I could perform various calculations. I could do some banking and pay my bills. I could look up almost anything you ever wanted to know. I could use it as a flashlight. I've heard you can even make phone calls on it. Now, oh yeah, you could shop on it, absolutely anything. Yeah, you're right. Could you have imagined this back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s? Even the early 2000s, I don't think I would have imagined this. It's magic. The wonder of it all. You all have one too, right? You have smartphones? Yeah? Your life must be amazing. Well, somehow it doesn't work like that. Everything's amazing, and it still doesn't mean that we feel contentment or that we feel happy or connected. The cell phone literally connects us, potentially, to just about any human or human knowledge and art and so on. But do we feel any more connected to humanity in any meaningful or deeper way? And I suspect for most of us, the answer is no. It does make certain incredible things possible. Technology does. And during my first year here with you, I had the hope and dream that someday we could live stream our services on YouTube. And the way fate had it, the pandemic made that a reality far faster than I ever would have thought possible. And I was and remain so grateful to our video team and our IT team. Thank you so much for all you've done to make it happen and continue to happen. And I'm grateful to all of you, to FCU as a whole, for seeing how important it was and funding it. And now we have the internal challenge of feeling more connection across the technology. We're still trying to find bridges between the online experience and the in-person experience. It's a work in progress here and lots of places now. And I'm wondering, what will happen? How is that going to play out? Will we think that technology can save us and that there could be some new tool invented that makes those communications easier? That could be a piece of the puzzle. But how will that feel? That has yet to be determined. Other things that jump out at me as I look back on our decade services, each decade built on trends from the previous decade, but each decade also had reactions against things from the previous decade. There were those liberation theology strands through all the modern decades, trends of increasing liberation for women, African Americans, the LGBTQ plus community, and more. And mostly, it was an overall trend of forward momentum for these and other oppressed groups. But there's also always that reactionary lag. So you have 2 steps forward and a reactionary step back. That just seems like a never-ending pattern. During our 80s service, I noted that it felt like Ronald Reagan was trying to, like the hit movie in the 80s, Back to the Future, trying to take us back to a time before the 60s. He wanted to take us back to a future that looked like the 50s, it sometimes felt. I wouldn't have dreamed that in the 21st century there would still be a subset of mostly white people who still want us to go and have a 1950s future. But what do you know? And they've had some political victories, notably the huge setback with the end of Roe v. Wade, as we'd known it for so many years. But I don't see, and maybe I'm naive and overly optimistic, I don't see how that can last. This subset of reactionary people are disproportionately getting older, from older generations, and in the future there won't be anyone around who lived through the 50s. The question is, can we hold on to democracy through this era that we have right now? The reactionary backlash we see in the early 21st century has this tendency toward fascism that is alarming. I confess I did not realize there was such a fascist streak in this country. Is this something that built itself up as we began to lose our GI generation? Those who, whatever their political persuasion, remembered fighting fascists. Those who knew all too well that totalitarianism is to be avoided at all cost, whether dressed as communism or fascism. The GI generation is mostly gone now, but they made a lot of the good things that happened from the 50s onward possible by preserving democracy, which is such a fundamental thing. And we're now in the midst of a kind of civil Cold War for democracy versus fascism. I find it bizarre, but here we are. Between that and the catastrophic climate change that's upon us, we could have our hands full. As I noted last week, the pandemic sent us all into a literal survival mode for a few years, but we really can't linger there. Sometimes working together for something greater than yourself is the key to building deeper community. It can be the key to finding allies, including allies across diversity, and the key sometimes simply to making deeper new friends. It can be the key to coming together and building each other up. Working with others for something greater than yourself can be a huge help in that battle against loneliness. And this is where much of my hope lies. I don't have a crystal ball. I can't see the future. I don't know what's going to even happen tomorrow. But I do know, as the saying goes, that necessity is the mother of invention. We are the many, and the true lovers of fascism are the few. We have our beautiful creative minds, and we have our people power, and we will find a way. In my vision, we here at FCU and Unitarian Universalists, along with many, many other wonderful progressive allies, all around us in our larger community can fight the good fight, can do the work, can fight white supremacy culture and religious nationalism, as well as fighting our own internal demons of fear and doubt, to build another world together. Another world is possible, and we can be among those who usher in a great turning. Did the 2000s and 2010s feel grim in some ways? Perhaps. But it's also the darkest before the dawn. And therein lies my hope. I want to thank you for being part of that good fight. And may we all rise together. May it be so. Blessed be, and amen. Our closing hymn will come back to our mothers with number 91, Mother of All. And I invite you to rise and body our spirit. For our closing words, if you're comfortable and the person next to you is comfortable, hold hands if you wish, or touch elbows or shoulders or feet or whatever works for you, or simply hold your hands out and feel the energy between us. I want to share some words by Judy Wells as our closing words. Flowers can remind us of our mothers or mothering figures and the indelible impression they made on our lives. Some mothers are like forsythia spilling over the neighbor's fence, almost unbearably cheerful, energetic, and determinedly curious, insinuating themselves into our lives. Some mothers are like daisies by the side of the road, humble, perhaps a little frayed around the edges, fretting as they pick their clothing. Does he love me? Does he love me not? Some mothers are like irises in formal gardens, austere and complicated, holding themselves back as we try in vain to discover what's really inside. Some mothers are like roses displayed on a trellis, lovely, sweet-smelling, sure of their favored place in our hearts. Some mothers are like thistles in a field, their sharpness wounding us as we try to get close.
Some mothers are like violets coming up in the lawn, unassuming but tenderly loyal, always there regardless of how we take them for granted. Some mothers are like beds of peonies, bosomy, overdressed, embarrassing us with their lavishness and the lipstick marks they leave on our cheeks. Some mothers are like lilac bushes beside the kitchen door, welcoming, familiar, reminding us that we can always come home again. Living or dead, perfect or flawed, gorgeous or plain, they are our mothers and mothering figures, and they did the best they could. Let us love them for what we can love in them, and honor them the best way we can, flawed as we are too. Let us say thank you each in our own way as we go in peace this day. Blessed be, and amen. Happy Mother's Day.